Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with Tom Karnes, owner of LaMacchia Travel Agency in Kenosha. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
When did you start working at the travel agency?
I started working at the travel agency in December 1983. I needed another job beyond my paper route. So family owned the business. I hit an uncle up for a job part-time, and that's how it all started.
And what did your uncle give you to do?
Well, I like to call them, I think I gave myself my own title. It was called Materials Distribution Manager back when I was 15 years old. Basically, I stamped brochures and filed papers.
Stamp brochures. How many brochures would you have to stamp?
You know, think about it. 1983, no internet, everything was paper. And, a travel agency, we sold the world. So we had brochures from all over the world. So every time I'd come in, there'd be boxes and crates. And, stamping them was okay, but my uncle was really a perfectionist. So if I had a little crooked, you know what, he'd come over, reprimand me, get it straight. So I got to be really good at it. So at least I thought, you could say I might even got a little cocky about it. I remember one of my biggest learning lessons in how to be humble as material distribution manager is one of the agents asked me why she couldn't find the Barbados brochure. Where was it filed? So, well, Barbados is filed under Wisconsin. She goes, no, I didn't say Baraboo. I said Barbados. I'm like, yeah, Barbados, nice beaches, palm trees. She's like, yeah. She goes, that's not Wisconsin. I'm like, and I pulled the brochure out from Wisconsin. I showed her. It said Barbados, W-I. She goes, dummy. That means West Indies, not Wisconsin. So I learned a big lesson right there to not be so cocky. So that would be a typical day in the office for me then.
A little bit geography lesson.
A big geography lesson.
What was the next job that you did?
Well, as I worked through high school part-time, after school, stamping brochures, delivering airline tickets, running errands, just pretty much answering the phones. I became somewhat of the admin person, receptionist. I was not a great student. I will go on record as saying that. So I found that I enjoyed working at the travel agency through high school much better than looking forward to going to college. So, my mentor and my uncle, Gene LaMacchia at the time, was kind of telling me, you got a little bit of a gift of gab. Imagine that. I said, oh. But, this might be a good career for you. And like I said, I was not a big fan of school. So I remember talking to my mom and dad about it and saying, I'm thinking I'd like to go into the travel agency and start working there instead of going to college. I'd hate to waste their money. So I went right in out of high school, and I got good at it. We sold, basically it was just airline tickets back in those days. A few vacations here, a few cruises, and this was 1985. But the majority of our business was airline tickets, and I got to be very good at it. I embraced the newer technology because, a few years prior to that, before I started, you had these thick books, the OAGs that were, like 10 pounds each, and travel planners, and everything was listed in the books there. And if you wanted to book an airline ticket, you had to call the airlines, wait on hold. So I was lucky enough to get in after that, and technology was making itself available a little bit different, and I was kind of able to embrace it. So.
And what kind of training did you have?
Well, it's interesting because back in the old days, ARC is the Airline Reporting Corporation. They were kind of like the government of all airline business. So, if you wrote an airline ticket wrong, or you put a wrong tax in, or if you automatically generated, ARC would come back and give you a debit memo. Anytime you saw a debit memo come in to the office, it'd be like in the old days when I was a Kenosha newsboy and I saw that pink complaint sticker on top of my pack. You'd get really nervous. But, ARC would come in and there was different things you had to learn and do about issuing tickets. And I remember first week of December 1984, I was still in high school. I was sent to Chicago for a week to go down to the United Airlines ticketing facility to learn how to run international tickets and what they called fare constructions and build. So I'm this 18-year-old, at that time I was still a 17-year-old kid, a week in Chicago with all these grown-ups and people that are running, and I remember feeling so completely out of place for the whole week. But it served well. I learned how to do ticketing, got very good at it. A year later, I was sent to Germany for a week at the Lufthansa training school for the same thing. It just blows my mind how far we've come. Everything's so automated now but I will tell you, I still get nervous when I get an ARC letter that says we might owe them some money.
Okay, so how did your growth proceed at the travel agency?
You know, it was a family business, worked for my uncle. An older cousin of mine was my boss for a few years. And I was lucky enough to work with some really great nurturing people, you know, besides family. My aunts, my grandma LaMacchia had worked with her. She'd come in, you know, up until about a year or two before she died, she'd come in every week and do the airline ticket report, the ARC. So I got to see, you know, their commitment to the business. I got to learn and be nurtured by them. And I was very proud of the legacy of it. So I really took it seriously. And after, you know, a few years of being the travel agent, moved up. We opened a couple different offshoot branches that they'd kind of stick me over in by myself to kind of test the grounds and see if it was going to work. So I like to call myself a manager, even though it's just managing myself. But over time, I developed a little bit more efficiencies and a lot more knowledge, and we got a lot more managerial roles. And I would say basically in about 1992, 93, I became general manager of the agency overall, and we had 2 locations. My uncle Gene LaMacchia was my boss, so I worked hand in hand with him. My auntie Nita LaMacchia was also in the office every day. So he ran the show. I just kind of managed the evolution of some of the new technology, some of the new marketing and things like that. So as that developed in the late 90s, I developed, you know, I just kind of needed to grow a little bit more. And Bill LaMacchia, one of the other LaMacchia brothers, owned a company called the Mark Travel Corporation, which is the parent company, or was the parent company of Funjet Vacations, United Vacations, Southwest Vacations, Blue Sky Tours, and I'm sure there's a few other ones that I might have missed. So he had an opportunity for me to go up there and do some business to consumer, B2C stuff, because mostly what he did, his company was B2B. So 2000, I moved up to Milwaukee and started working at Mark Travel as a vice president. I was up there for 8 years, and I was responsible for products such as Sears Vacations, Harley Davidson Vacation, Ron John Vacations, plus 5 or 6 different travel agencies across the United States. I guess I was kind of an incubator, because none of those are still around, is what it was. But not for a lack of trying, but it was also the demise would have been that fateful day, September 11, 2001. And all those projects were in place at that time and really kind of came to a halt.
Okay, and how long did you work at Mark Travel?
I was a vice president of Mark Travel from 2000 to 2008. And if anybody knows me, they probably understand this. I'm not really a corporate guy. I'm a little bit more fly by the seat of my pants, you know, get my hands in, hands dirty type of person. And it seemed like I was spending a lot of time preparing for meetings, and there's a lot more planning and detail of things that I might not have necessarily been my strength. So Bill LaMacchia, who actually owned the agency at that point, had just kind of said, did you ever think about buying the family business? And I said, no, I never did. And the response was very intriguing, or the offer was very intriguing to me. So just kind of digested for a little bit, went back to my wife, Monica. We'd been married for 18 years at that point. We got married in 91. And talked to her a little bit about it. And she knew, the commute to Milwaukee and, just kind of the general feeling, I had working up there. She's like, you know what, maybe we should do this. And she said, you know what, let's buy the agency. Let's make it our own. So, no better time to buy a travel agency than 2008. What bubble could burst at that point, right? So at the end of 2008, I just remember signing a piece of paper on my birthday, which is December 30th in Milwaukee. Signing the paper and leaving the corporate offices in Milwaukee, I don't want to say for the last time, but as an employee there for the last time, with a piece of paper in my hand. It said, Monica and I own the travel agency. So January 1st, 2009, we rolled that baby out.
So what is the origination of the travel agency itself? How did that start?
Great question. It's kind of a variation. So the actual LaMacchia agency, which is what it was called, started in 1931 by my grandfather, Edmund LaMacchia. And he graduated from Marquette, kind of an interesting story. A young Italian man, most Italian people in the community did not get the opportunity to go to college. He was lucky enough to be able to graduate from Marquette. But one of the other unique things is he was an only child. So both of those were not a real popular or very consistent here in the 1920s. So when he graduated from Marquette, he opened the agency. And at that time, what he was doing a lot more of the Italians that migrated over, a lot of paperwork of taxes, land contracts, translations. But a big part of his business was bringing family members over here from Italy. So kind of to predate, now it's kind of the prequel. That's how it is nowadays in making a movie, right? So now we're going to go to the prequel. So my great-grandfather, who was Eugenio LaMacchia, he came over in about I believe the 1880s from Calabria. And when he came over, he was very successful. He opened quite a few different businesses here, and one of them was a grocery store. And through the grocery store, he started selling steamship travel. So as families were migrating over from Italy, he assisted them with steamship travel tickets, getting them here, getting them situated, and then you can kind of see how that would translate into, handling the Italian taxes and family settlements and all the different paperwork that would happen as family members keep coming over. So he died in 1920, and my grandfather, like I said, then went to college and just kind of picked up where he left off and made it the official business.
What was his degree in at Marquette?
Business, and I think it was a business degree.
Okay. Do you have any information as to how many of these steamship tickets were sold back and forth for families to come or people to return? How?
That's an excellent question. I've always had every intent. We have a basement full of filing cabinets of a lot of the original papers, many of them from the 50s and 60s. That's where the majority of them are. I do not know how many. Having traveled back to Calabria, the region that many of the Italians in the Kenosha area are from, it's interesting to see the similarities in facial recognition, I guess. But when you're in towns like Murano Marquezzato, Murano Principato, which are the two of the really, like where the LaMacchias are from, you see a lot of the familiar Savaglio, Ruffalo, Bellotti names that you would see here. But you also see their faces look very similar to people around here. You'd be walking by and you're like, I think I know that person. Why would I know this person? But very similar. So when they originated from there, I think it was word of mouth that just kind of started generating more and more activity for my great-grandfather.
So your grandfather continued this well into the 60s?
Yes, and it was even transferred into my uncle, Gene LaMacchia, who I started with. And it was always interesting because the family was always involved in the business. So, in the 50s and the 60s, when somebody, there's a lot of times that my grandfather would front money for tickets or steamship or have a pay offer. He was really, and this is probably one of my greatest regrets is he died 2 years before I was even born. So I never got to meet the gentleman, and that always bothered me, But I heard he was a good man, a fair man, and he worked with a lot of local Italians to be able to reunite their families, to the point where there was times he'd send my uncles at 17, 18 years old to drive to New York or drive to South Chicago or whatever to pick up some of the Italian immigrants coming in off that were migrated over because nobody else would do it. So they all kind of came together to make that a seamless experience.
And when did the business shift from steamship into other modes of travel?
That would have been in the mid-50s, and it's great. I'm always proud about this story. It's my grandma LaMacchia. She was the mother of 6, and she worked with my grandfather throughout the week in the office. So they worked in the 50s and 60s together. And then he got sick in the early 60s, so she picked up even more. But it was always impressive to me that my grandma LaMacchia was an office worker, a business owner, and a partner. And I believe my grandfather truly looked at her as that. But one of the things she did that it made a huge difference in, obviously, the business and allowed me to buy it, but she had him apply for his plates with the airlines because she knew airline business was going to be taking off. Good joke. The airline business was going to be very important if they wanted to stay in the travel industry. So when you apply for the plates, there's a lot of paperwork. The airlines review it. It goes back to that airline ARC that we talked a little bit about. They review it. They have very stringent rules and policies of locking up airline ticket stock, because it's truly, back then it was, you could, if you knew how to scam it, you could write your own ticket, basically. Again, another joke. You could write your own ticket, but so she was very instrumental in getting that done. So by the mid-50s, they had their airline approval, and they started selling airline tickets.
Did they do other work beyond just the selling of tickets?
Yep, they had 6 kids, so they needed to be very creative. And, we talked a little bit about how they did the paperwork for the Italian translations and migrations. That was part of the business. Then they also started selling insurance. So LaMacchia Insurance was around for quite a while. And I believe in the late 50s, early 60s, it got to the point where they were actually in the bail bonds business, which I find a business card with, Bill LaMacchia, Gene LaMacchia, bail bonds. It always just kind of cracked me up. And I've had a couple stories of my uncles that said they've actually once or twice went down to try to find somebody that skipped out on them. I'm like, oh, I definitely do not want to get back in that business.
Okay, and so how then did your uncle Gene get involved?
Well, as the oldest of 6 kids, my grandfather, he passed away in, I believe, 1953. He was 58 years old, or 1963. He was 58 years old when he passed away from a form of Parkinson's. So he was sick for a few years before he passed. So he was not able to go into work. And my uncle Gene, just as the oldest, took it over, started working. He was a Marquette grad himself. And he was more of an engineer. And that was what he wanted to be, and he had done that through his college years as well as worked in the family business. And he did what you do then. You just pick up and take over the family business, and kind of put your dreams and your hopes a little bit on hold to make sure everybody else is taken care of.
Okay, and did he have a brother also involved?
Well, a little bit later in the 60s, his brother, Bill LaMacchia, went to work at American Motors, went on the line, didn't even finish high school, worked on the line for 3 months, hated it, got out of it very quickly, and I think he then talked to Gene and his mom and my grandma LaMacchia and got into the family business. But as both of these two, my uncles were both just starting their families. They realized they can't raise 2 families and also support my grandmother on the wages coming in from the agency. And what the story goes, my Uncle Gene passed away a while ago, so I always like to get the stories from him, but he wrote 2 letters back in like 67 or 65, one to an engineer company to apply for a job for him, and one to a company called Travel Power to apply for a travel job for Bill LaMacchia. As my Uncle Gene would say, I never heard back from the architect company. We heard back from Travel Power, so Bill ended up going to Milwaukee, working for a travel company in Milwaukee, and ultimately moved his family to Cedarburg. So Gene and Emma, my grandma, were still running the agency together and raising their families and kind of developing, and did an excellent job. And it's funny, I was thinking about this the other day, is in the 70s and early 80s, there were 15 travel agencies, offices in Kenosha.
Different companies.
Different families. And, I wouldn't be doing it proper if, I say, the LaMacchias, my grandpa and my uncle and my grandma have been very responsible for bringing a whole migration of Italians over here. But George and Bianca Franceschini owned Kenosha Travel. And it was almost very similar. They had their group that they connected with that they brought back. So it was really, and it was always one of those things as a kid, driving by Kenosha Travels, They're the competition. You always kind of look down on them. Midtown, you look down on them. So all the different travel agencies you competed with, you never ever spoke with them. And I remember George Franceschini coming into our office one time, and him and my uncle were talking to each other in Italian. And I just thought it was the weirdest thing. I'm like, I can't believe he's I can't believe he's here. And I can't believe these guys are so friendly to each other. And then, as you grow up and you learn, you realize that, for the betterment of the community and the people all involved, they work together more times than I thought. So that was always interesting.
And at that time, with so many travel agencies, there was enough business support to support all of those?
Yes, remember, it was only airline tickets back then. People were flying constantly. All you needed was a couple corporate. We were lucky enough. We had the Parkside account for many years. We had the American Motors account for many years. And then we were able to migrate into a little bit more of a leisure business. So we were able to embrace that change. It was coming when commissions were eliminated by the airlines. And the other agencies, and whatever ones were left around September 11th really was kind of the final, So, but yeah, there was that many agencies in this greater area. It always blew my mind.
And so then you moved into the vacation travel business. What kind of a change was that from selling airline tickets to packages?
Well, kind of the migration over is Bill LaMacchia, when he left to go to Travel Power in 1974, he started blocking seats on airplanes and matching them with hotel rooms like in Vegas or in Jamaica. And he really kind of started what we call the charter business. So, he'd put them together and he'd sell them for one price. Instead of component by component, somebody would be at the airport to meet you when you got off the plane with a sign, take you to your hotel, get you set up. And in 74, that was called Funway Holidays. And that really started taking off and growing. And with that success, by the late 70s, early 80s, Mexico, Caribbean, Vegas were all and Orlando were just growing so fast, as well as Hawaii, that, the relationship with Bill LaMacchia and LaMacchia Travel, we supported it. We wanted to make sure, that any of the products, we were supporting him. So we migrated over more as family support and whatnot, but he kind of had a vision of the way things are changing. Travel to Mexico is not just for the rich and famous anymore. By being able to put this together with, low airfares, we can make it more available to more people. So we supported that, and as we supported it, we just kind of migrated and started doing more and more and more of it. That's where our focus came. And then in, 1988, 89, the 90s, the airlines cut the commissions. So as soon as they cut the commissions, that's how we got paid. All of a sudden, our pay was taken away, which meant, thank God we started on this leisure business ahead of the curve. That would have been a problem had we not.
Okay, so walk me through how you get started in that business. You pick an airline to buy tickets, you pick a hotel at random somewhere, or do you?
It's all about relationships. So for the start of Funway Holidays, for example, Las Vegas was one of the key markets. So, you know what airlines fly, Milwaukee or Chicago to Las Vegas, what days a week they go. You say, all right, listen, I want 4 days a week, I'm going to buy 60 seats every day. If I sell them, great. If I don't sell them, that's on me. So the airlines say, great. Here they are, here's a set price for your seats. And you have somebody on the ground in Las Vegas that is connected, and you start working with hotels that you think are good price, good product, good value, and a great representation of the brand you want to build. And you go in and say, listen, I got 40 seats on every flight coming in from so-and-so that I need to fill. That motivates people more than anything when they know you have a little skin in the game. And they're like, all right, I'll work with you, and same type of thing. We got to commit to X amount of rooms, X amount of nights. Well, when those 40 seats started getting sold, 6 months ahead of time instead of 3 months ahead of time, and they started filling up and the momentum started building more and more, all of a sudden the airline's like, hey, we can't give you 100 seats because it would cost too much. Well, FunJet back in the late 70s started charters. So all of a sudden they'd bring in their own planes. They chartered a whole plane. 3-night, 4-night, and 7-night pattern. Sunday, Mondays, Sunday for 4 nights, Monday for 4 nights. There was the whole pattern you would do, and that really kind of blew up really quick. So the Vegas charter really kind of jumped, I think, Mark Travel to really develop, and other converse side of that part is technology. When Bill started, he invested a lot of money and time in technology. It was originally a very manual process, but early on, technology was like, hey, that's the only way this is going to work. And as well as developing a very successful tour company, he developed a very successful technology company.
And what other kind of technology has changed or affected the travel business?
Well, think about in the late 90s as the internet was coming aboard, okay? That was really going to be very startling because everybody thought that was the demise of the travel agent. But all we do is sell airline tickets. Yes, we understand. And, it now has become a commodity. It's transactional. It's easy. We needed to reinvent ourselves to provide value and service, And as the internet evolved, and it's kind of interesting because when the internet was evolving in the late 90s, early 2000, we were watching it very closely. We were embracing it ourselves because there was tools and things. Obviously, it made the travel agent's job even a little bit easier. But then what happened is September 11th came, and then you have a whole year of people stopped traveling. So you have, and even longer than that, you have this generation of young adults coming in the late 90s, and what happens is they started getting comfortable on the internet. Then September 11th hits, nobody stops traveling. And then literally, I would say 2002, 2003, you start talking to somebody and people are like, travel agencies are still around? I mean, it took that short of a window from the late 90s to the post-September 11th for people to go, travel agencies are still around, huh? And that type of technology hit for us. Like I said, we were lucky to be able to provide service behind it. And a lot of travel agencies were very nervous about it. We watched it cautiously, but it has also created a much better informed consumer. And in the old days, travel agents, I think, were a little worried about well-informed consumers, But to us, the level of creating expectation is the most important thing. So that was a big technology advance. And ever since then, the distribution systems of airline tickets, cruise lines, tours, it just keeps evolving and evolving. So, right now, we just spent a lot of money building a brand new website at LaMacchia Travel that we feel is more user-friendly. And it's again, without it being transactional. LaMacchia Travel, we're not a transactional, lowball, discount travel outlet. That's not what we do. We're a service, and we provide value. And the technology that just continues to evolve has allowed us to do that.
So today, you can do anything, go anywhere.
Today you can do anything, you can go anywhere, and you can reach us anytime, anyhow. I mean, that's the other thing about it is, my phone is constantly ringing in the middle of the night, on the weekends, after hours. People are able to access us, and if there's an issue with their trip, if they're having a problem, we're there to back it up and fix it, or if they got to cancel, if there's a family emergency. So technology has also made that easier for us to handle, a lot less inconvenient than in the old days. We can now rectify something very quickly, but it continues to evolve.
And your job today?
My job today, it's funny, I was thinking about that on the way over here, is, I am a support for my team, basically. I have 10 agents that are at the front desk all the time, and they're cranking out vacations left and right, and the airlines are canceling flights. Prices are changing constantly. Hotels are being oversold. Prices, like I said, continuously bounce up and down. And I would say 40% of my business is supporting the team, giving them direction, coaching them, mentoring them, saying, here's what we're going to do. 15% is dealing with a customer that feels they've been wronged by us or have been wronged by the airlines or somebody, and they want somebody to hear them, and a lot of that's mine. The other part of my day that I like is just kind of the creative. What can we do next? We talked about a website. Working with the team and the managers of our marketing to build a website like that was fun. We developed a national romance travel brand called Love and Away. Basically, we specialize in destination weddings. And how that happened is, LaMacchia Travel had been getting a lot more requests for destination weddings, in 2016 and 17. It really got to be a very popular thing. And it started growing. And we're like, we should really embrace this. But the name LaMacchia really doesn't mean a lot outside of this area, much less try to spell it, try to phonetically say it. So we had to develop a product called Love and Away. And Love and Away is our variation of that we run through within LaMacchia Travel with its own team.
And how many employees do you have?
Let's see. We have, Love and Away has 2 full-time people dedicated just to that. And LaMacchia Travel on top of it, we have admin, we have accounting, and 14 people, including the advisors and the admin and support teams.
How is staff turnover? Do you keep people a long time? Do they move on?
It's funny, I can't remember the last time somebody left LaMacchia Travel to go work at another agency anywhere. Our team has been together. They're basically like family. I have people that have been working with me for 30 plus years. And we've brought in some new talent and some great people that love what they do that are just out of college. So we have a great mix of people, all this wonderful experience.
How do you find that employee?
Our business is a little bit interesting. So it's really a personality test. It's not even a test, it's a conversation. Somebody that has an eye for detail. They truly want to make the consumer's experience a positive one. And they really take ownership of a vacation. Those type of things. You know what we find? Bartenders. Bartenders and servers tend to be excellent travel advisors because they listen, they care. And we've all had the waitress or waiter that didn't. So, but majority-wise, they're people person, and that's what we need. We need people persons with great organizational skills. And and when we hire 1 or 2 or 3 at a time, it's not like we're going out to get 20 people. There's not a black and white resume or a job posting we do. And as they come on, they start learning with Mexico and Caribbean, and depending on how quickly they learn, they're selling Asia and Europe. Depending, like I said, how quickly they learn.
Do you have friendships with your employees?
Yes, our staff is family, and that is very important to us. And it's always my entire life, from working there when I was materials distribution manager, people were always very important. And again, I think that is why we have so little turnover, is we really, truly, the relationship, we have a saying, it's got to be win-win. You know what? We got to get out of it, and you got to get out of it. And Monica and myself, we take it very seriously that, we're truly vested in these 14 people's lives. And, we need to be accountable to them.
And does the business provide extracurriculars, so to speak?
It does. And we do our, we get the holiday events. We do, we've done summer picnics. We go to shows. We do a lot together. And the team, without it even be official, does a lot together. This year, we're very excited. This is the first time ever we're taking the staff to Mexico. So we're taking everybody down. We're not closing. We got 3 new people that, poor guys, they didn't get a chance to qualify for this trip this year. So they're going to be busy for a few days. But we're very excited to be able to take the team to Mexico and just 3 days of really being able to relax and hang out with each other.
Okay, and how many people do you estimate are traveling through packages that you put together?
Annually, I would tell you in 2022, we probably move 7,000 people. It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
Well, what kind of world events or other challenges have you had to face? You've already mentioned 9/11.
9/11. COVID is obviously the biggest one there that really kind of changed the way we do business. We do business because coming out of COVID, there's a lot more people that didn't use a travel agent that were starting to call us. And that was wonderful. They finally found the value in it, and we absolutely love that. So that was a big one. We also end up, things the phones will slow down a little bit. We do a lot of Mexico, Caribbean. We do a lot of Europe. So if there's a situation like an incident in Mexico, and it gets big press, even if it doesn't apply to the destinations in Mexico we sell, that slows the business down. So we got to offset that. We then need to go, there's a lot of times myself or the team travel to places that might be questionable and just kind of document it and put it on social media saying, hey, everything's fine here, don't. And the same, you get things in Europe that happen as well. You know, swine bird flu. We had COVID. We had the Mexican drug cartels. There's been something for almost every part of the world we've dealt with.
Okay, since you've traveled so many places and you've dealt with so many people, can you think of any strange vacation requests that someone has come into the office and said, I want to do this, I want to book this, that you have gone, oh, wait a minute, how am I going to do that?
Well, there's the infamous, and this happens more than once. It's kind of funny. I was talking to my staff and just picking their brains a little bit about some of the things we've been through over the years. And we get the occasional, I want to take a train to Hawaii. Actually, it usually starts out with, we want to go to Hawaii. Okay, but we don't want to fly. And we don't want to cruise. Can we take a train? We want to take a train to Hawaii. And it kind of evolves, and it's like, yeah, that rail is not completed yet. You know, they're working on it, but that's always one you just kind of scratch your head and say, okay, we're going to have to spend a little extra time with this person on geography and understanding things. And it goes similar. Geography is the demise of basically all of these. I want to cruise to Denali. You want to cruise to Alaska? No, I want to cruise to Denali. I mean, everybody I know cruises and goes to Denali. Denali is a few hours inland. There's no cruise going up there. And again, it's an education of geography for them and pointing it out. And, you know, we may laugh at it backward, you know, just kind of like, man, I can't believe it. But people don't know what they don't know. And I tell my team, it's like, thank God they don't, because that keeps us in business. You know, we're there to help and accommodate. And so we've had requests like that. We've had ashes that wanted to be spread out. We've had, you know, the ancestry travel that, you know, sometimes they find out it wasn't the ancestry that they were looking for. It was a different, you know, there's been a lot of different stories, you know, over the years. So 7,000 people a year, you can only imagine how many we've heard.
Okay. Looking at all the places that you have available to you to provide to other people, do you have a gauge as to where people in Kenosha tend to want to go?
Well, I can tell you this year for 2023, the majority of calls we're getting, probably 1 out of every 4 calls, is Italy. I don't ever remember. I mean, we're an Italian agency, an ethnic agency, and we do a lot of Italian business and always have. But again, it's the amount of calls, every 4th, 5th call maybe, I want to go to Italy, and they still want to go this summer. And that is very popular in our area right now. Mexico, Caribbean, also very, very popular. If you start talking a little bit about something unique and different outside, Iceland has been huge for the last few years. Asia, this year is just starting to really get crazy. I mean, you know, we've always done some Asia, but the requests coming in 2023, the first quarter for Asia, are really outpacing any other year we've done. The fastest growing type of travel we've seen in the last 4 years is European river cruises. European river cruises is by far one of the most popular.
Given the fact that you've been to a lot of places, seen a lot of things, obviously all benefit to being able to sell packages to other people.
Correct.
What or where is your favorite beach?
My favorite beach is, it's always a tough call, but my favorite beach is in Negril, Jamaica. I love that beach because it's so long and it's not interrupted or built out. It's just such a long, and there's very few places you can see the sunset like you can on the west side of Jamaica in Negril. So the Negril beach, the sand, it's one of my favorite places.
How about your favorite city to visit?
This is a toss-up because it's always the favorite is what mood am I in today, right? So one of my favorite cities is Barcelona. I've been there a few times, and I love the energy of the city. I love the food. I love the history. I love the architecture. And I'm not notoriously an architectural loving guy, but there's something special about Barcelona that I really like. I will also tell you, Mérida in the Yucatan of Mexico, probably my hidden gem of all, very, very few people have ever gone there. I've been lucky enough to go once. And for a city of more than 1 million people, is probably the safest, cleanest, best food, most welcoming city I've ever been in. And the mystique and the mystery behind the Mayans and the Yucatan and the beginning of time and the Big Bang and all the different things that happened in that area, it truly is really kind of a special town.
What about your favorite country?
Favorite country is, it's going to be Italy. I just, I was trying to figure out what city do I put in, but it's the country because, Florence leads me into my favorite parts. I just, Tuscany and that whole area is just magical to me. And then you got the northern lakes of Bellagio and Sicily and Taormina and Mount Etna and then there's Cosenza, knowing that that's where the family is. The last LaMacchia that we know of got his little grocery store in the area. So it's definitely Italy.
And what do you think is the best part of your job on a day-to-day basis?
The best part of my job on a day-to-day is absolutely the people. I'm a people person, and being able to see somebody that had an absolute wonderful trip and come back and be changed. A lot of people, the transition of somebody that's never been somewhere that has been somewhere now is looking forward to going is always one of my favorite things. So it's the people, it's knowing that we're part of that. That's really a huge thing. Honeymoons, family trips, multi-generational, those are great. It's also the opportunity when somebody's not happy with us. That comes to me. I deal with all of that. We're a hands-on owner, and the ability for me to talk to somebody and, hey, you know what? The thing about LaMacchia Travel, if we screwed up, I'm going to tell you we screwed up. We're not going to be one of those, it was somebody else's fault. And we take the bullet for airlines, lots of people all the time. But the ability to talk to somebody, tell them our side of it, and let them know, hey, we're here for you. When I hang up from a call like that, I feel good. Even if that person's still mad at me or hates me or whatever, as long as I got my chance to, in a mature conversation, tell somebody how we felt or what went down, that I appreciate that.
What's the future of travel?
That's a great question. The future of travel is, a lot of people are talking about all the SpaceX out there, the Virgin Galactic, all, getting ready for space travel. I think what you're going to see right now, and COVID had a big thing, had a big role in this, is that people are wanting more experiential. There's going to be more people that may go to an all-inclusive in Mexico, but instead of laying on the beach and drinking and eating and playing, beer pong at the pool, they're out in the cenotes, or they're out in, they're volunteering, seeing more people volunteer. And I use Mexico and the all-inclusives as an example because that's truly your standard, you think of a vacation, that's it. But the requests, like I said, every other call to Italy is always for a smaller town, a Bari or Montepulciano. I always love saying that one. Things that are off the beaten path. And we have had to, because, as a travel agency, we're trained to sell predominantly the majority of vacation travel. That's what we do. There's a new product, river cruises. Now we know how to do that. Here's a new product. But now we are becoming more curators than we are just kind of processing travel agencies or travel agents. And, I think looking at my team and the people there, they're doing the travel as well. They're trying to get outside and do different things. So the future travel is going to be very unique, very outside the norm. The question people ask me all the time, there's still travel agencies, right? You're still around. How long do you think that'll be? As long as we continue providing a value. And, service, people can book it online. People can book it, independent contractors all over the United States. But as long as the airlines can cause chaos, and there's chaos in cities and government and health and whatnot, you want to book with an experienced agent that knows how to get you out of that. And that's, I think, experiential travel is going to be the thing moving forward. I think you're going to see in the United States, especially around the Midwest, I think you're going to see a huge migration of travel to the Far East and Asia. I think people in this area have been very comfortable with Europe and Mexico, but I think we're going to see a big move towards Asia because it's getting a lot of great press, the value and the cost. So there's a lot of exciting stuff. And space travel.
Thank you for talking with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.